Hello, history fans. Welcome back to the Spots of Love podcast. It's been almost 6 months since we've done a new episode, and I'm so excited to get started again, talking with so many people that I know you guys want to hear from, other fans that maybe we don't know much about, and just all sharing our experiences and our journeys with Barney, much like we did with our previous episodes. Today, I have the wonderful Matt Parrish, Ranger Matt, here with me. Barney fan. I think most people now are starting to know him because of the You Are Special two-part Barney documentary that he did on YouTube. Matt, welcome. We're going to talk about all of this. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good, brother. Thanks for having me. How you doing?
Man, I'm really good. Just kind of getting over a cold because the weather here, I'm in Omaha, so
Oh,
the weather's been going up and down. It'll be hot, then it's cold, and it's rainy, then tornadoes. So, and then with kids, it just adds to all of that.
yeah, I feel you, man. Mother Nature sometimes can't make up her mind. Maybe I don't think she watched a lot of Barney, 'cause Barney,
Yeah,
but that's just me going.
yeah. Man, I'm glad you're here. I'm really excited about all the stuff that you're doing, Barney related. But then I know there's some things that's coming up that we'll talk about in a little bit. That's not necessarily Barney related. But I'm just so proud to see the work that you've done. To have talked with you around, I think maybe this time or a little bit later last year, and to see where you came so far. I'm just super excited to have you here. So thank you for agreeing to do this for us. I really appreciate it.
No problem, brother. I'm glad to be here. I feel like I'm honored. I made it to the podcast, man.
Yeah.
Thank you. I made it.
This is the big dogs here,
Most definitely.
man. So we always get started. We start it the same way every time. Let's just go back to the beginning. Do you remember, or if not necessarily remember specifically the introduction, maybe what your earliest experience was with Barney, and what that was like?
Well, as a trivia, I've told people that I was born the year Barney went to PBS. I was born in July of '91, and my earliest memories that I recall the most was Barney in concert, Rock with Barney, Waiting for Santa. Those early videos. I didn't see the first two with Sandy Duncan, but the ones that came later
Mhm.
when Derek joined the cast were the ones I remember the most. And I can frequently say that those videos I listed, I watched the most. The video Barney's Magical Musical Adventure, I watched that all the time. I took it to my grandfather's house constantly and watched it. So I was just glued, and it was just something about Barney that just grasped my attention. It was about love, and the kids was having fun. So that's my main memory of watching Barney at the very beginning.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. Do you remember what it like that when first watching it for the first time, what it was that captured you that made you continuously want to start getting to the point where I'm taking this tape everywhere I go? Do you remember what maybe stuck out to you back then? Why Barney was that character for you at that time?
I want to say the music. I mean, the music melodies was great back then. I mean, ironically, when people talk about Barney, it's like you got to remember that was the '90s, pre
Yeah.
'80s, so it had that feel appeal, smoothness, and like Mr. Sun, Mr. Knickerbocker. I mean, Mr. Sun, I used to play the deaf all the
Mhm.
time in the house, in the car. That was my. I used to jam and do a dance routine with that. Now I would attempt to do a 360, but I'm not a David Jordan, so I can't, that whole thing.
Yeah.
but Barney just and it's like it always made me feel happy when I watched the show. I mean, my mother taught me the life steps of look both ways, don't talk to strangers, so forth that
Mhm.
Barney was doing. But just watching the kids have fun with it and the music, the background music, them painting and what have you. I mean, that would glue me to the show for a number of years to watch, and
Yeah.
I just it glued me, which is why I felt Barney didn't get the credit he always deserved. 'Cause it was a wonderful show to me growing up.
Yeah, for sure. Man, the music is so great, and I think most people are starting to know even more now. Music is a huge thing for kids because of the repetition and those kind of things. It helps kids really learn. Um, what was cool with Barney is like it was so, and I've said this so many times before. It was so timeless. The music, you can listen to that same music from those same videos today, and it does not feel outdated or sound outdated at all. And I think
Not at
that's
all.
also it was pioneering for its time, but also it stood the test of time as well.
Absolutely. I mean, I can piggyback off what you just said. I mean, each one of them songs, the green grass goes all around, Mr. Knickerbocker, Mr. Sun, Just Imagine. I mean, those are culture classics
Yeah.
and something that'll last on even further into the next generation. I mean, if the episodes, if they don't stand out, the songs definitely will. I mean, they
Yeah,
grasp everybody's attention. But you know, everything to me was great about Barney, though.
for sure. So you said Mr. Sun was one that you played out all the time. They created their own dance routines too and things like that. Would you say that's your favorite Barney song of all time, or do you have one different than Mr. Sun that is like the one for you, if there is one?
Yeah, that's a hard one.
Yeah,
For Barney, I mean, I loved all the songs, but definitely Mr. Sun. I remember the most dancing and listening to the most. And
mm,
when Imagination Island came out for trivia, we bought the cassette tape and the book the same day. And I remember
wow.
playing Just Imagine over and over and over again in the car. I'm glad my mother didn't get a headache because I remember, can we hear it again? But Mr. Sun and Just Imagine and Mr. Knickerbocker, those three alone were like my
Yeah,
standalone favorites of Barney, along with the "I Love You" song and "You Are Special."
for sure. Man, those are good songs. For me, like it is really hard. I always tell people when they ask me, like, it for me, I don't have a favorite song. It depends on what I'm feeling for the day. Like there
Right,
was so much music that was literally, and not just because I think, and I think you would agree, it's not just because we're Barney fans. Like I think if anybody was to listen to Barney's music from an unbiased standpoint and listen to some of those songs, albeit they were kid songs, like they were just so well made, from the instrumentals to the lyrics, the way that it was performed. There's literally so many great songs that you can't, for me, I can't ever just pin down one. It's just whatever I'm feeling for that specific day. That's what the number one song is.
absolutely. I mean, whenever I heard Barney's song, I felt like I could fly. I mean, I felt
Oh
free.
yeah.
I don't think no other show could touch that. Not at all.
Yeah. And it just ties into what, Cheryl Leach and all those other creators, what they wanted for the show anyway, which is when this show comes on, we want you to not watch our show. We want you to interact with our show. We want the music to make you, feel like you can fly or feel like you can do the dance moves or whatever it is. We want to see that. And you're not the only person, I'm not the only person that has said, you dance along to this music or create your own routines or whatever it is. And
Right.
exactly what they were trying to do, and they succeeded in that. And you
Most
can't get
definitely.
any better than that.
And it's ironic, even speaking with people when I did this project, I mean, it's like I would ask them, what is your favorite song? And when they would ask
Yeah,
me, it's like the music was just so melody and it just grabs your attention. You want to dance. If you had a Barney plush or toy like I did as a kid,
yeah.
you would use it and play it around me. I would copy the dance steps and everything Barney did with my plush toy that I had. I just
Wow.
went crazy with it.
Yeah. Man, that's super cool. So, did you physically, you said you used to do it to copy the moves with the doll. Did you ever physically imitate the show, like stand in front of the TV and imitate Barney's moves and that kind of thing?
I would to a degree. I mean, I
Mhm.
would sometimes. I mean, of course, hey, Miss Knickerbocker Bockety Bock, I
Oh
like
yeah.
it the way that you bockety and the green grass goes all around. I would do it a
Yeah.
little bit, but um, not all the time. But sometimes I would do that to a
Yeah.
degree. I would do that.
Nice. But you would use the toy and pretend that was Barney. That
Right.
when I was a kid, I used to my grandma has an in-home daycare, so I used to make puppet shows with my Barney toys. They weren't even actual puppets, they were just the regular dolls, but I would,
Hmm.
like, I wish I had one over here from the shelf. I would put my thumb under the mouth and I could like move my thumb like this and make
Wow.
some jaw move. And
Mm,
I did terrible impressions of Baby Bop, BJ, and eventually Riff. But I had a picture of Barney back then. And I would build like these park sets out of, leftover like linoleum for the floor and things like that, and put on
right.
puppets for the kids, like writing scripts and all those things. And I think Barney, the love for the music and wanting to act and things came from that show. So I poured that into those puppets. But I didn't think there was anyone else who ever took the dolls and imitated Barney with the dolls. You know what I mean?
All
Pretty cool.
all the time, man. All the time. When it benefited for me, especially since I was a only child growing up. I had plenty. My mother just spoiled me. All the Barney tapes and things that I had. I mean, I would just imitate. And I've told people the story as a trivia. when the Barney movie came out, I actually took my plush and put him in my tub, thinking he was going to come to
Yeah.
life, like what Cody did with him, and he came to life. I did that and was like, "Oh, come on, you're gonna come to
What's
life
happening?
now."
Did you
I
turn the
imitate.
Did you turn the water on too?
No,
Okay.
no,
Okay.
I didn't do that. But I would put him in the tub, close the curtain, and then I would slowly turn, and I would get ready, and I'd be like, "Oh, but he's not here." But I would imagine that he was
Yeah.
there, So that's one of the many stories of my Barney childhood that I
And maybe you just weren't imagining hard enough.
had. Well,
That's what Cody would say. Maybe you're not trying hard enough.
I mean, I tried to find the purple soda. Maybe I didn't drink enough grape soda as a kid. I drank a
Right.
lot of orange.
Yeah. Man, orange soda is good too if you ask Kel.
Well, aren't you glad I didn't say banana just now?
Man, that's awesome, dude. You mentioned like you were glad that your mom didn't get too annoyed by like the replay of the Barney music and things like that. Was that how your childhood was? Like there was never a time where she was like, okay, can we watch something else or listen to something else? She always, just allowed you to live in that.
Most definitely. I mean, my mother was one of those people where if it was Barney, and even though this is a Barney podcast, but whether it was Barney or Disney or Thomas, she would just let me watch it nonstop. And with Barney, she never got annoyed by it. She loved
Yeah.
Baby Bop. She loved BJ. In fact, she just told me the story that when we got our BJ, well, when I got my BJ, that Toys R Us had to order it. And when we
Wow.
got there, I guess the guy called her and told her it was there. So when we got there, when he realized who we were and he saw me, he went in the back, got him, brought it to me, and she said my face was like, and I was
Wow.
happy. I took him in my arm and hugged him. So it
Oh
was
man.
that, and I had the automatronic Barney that came out in like the late '90s. That was like $100 or some change. Where you press the saying, "Cover my eyes" to play peekaboo. So that I played with all the time, and I attributed that to my mother, and I credit her in the movie because she was a
Yeah.
big supporter behind Barney, and she didn't mind it. I watched it over and over again, and she too had met a parent once who didn't get why I was into the show, and she said it's a children's show. My son loved it. I don't have a problem with it, so I attributed that to her. She's a big supporter, big
That's
supporter.
awesome. That's amazing, man. It's great when you have a guardian um, who cares that much about their child or the child they're caring for, to just let them live in this world that they're safe and comfortable in. You know what I
Right.
mean? My parents were kind of the same way. I grew up in a single parent household, so my mom kind of just let me live in it. But my grandma was the one who would buy all my videos and things. She like she would. I remember being like 6 years old, and my grandma would call my mom, get me on the phone. Hey, Karan, there's a Barney movie. It says Barney's blah 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 blah. Do we have that one? And I would tell her yes or no, or that's the new one. We don't have that one, and she'll buy it. And then as soon as I'm at the daycare the next day, boom, it's in the VHS player. So like, um, my grandma was the one who kind of aided that, which I think what I've learned as you get older, your parents are great. Most times, parents are great. They care for you, they love you. But the grandparents, once a parent becomes a grandparent, all rules are out the window for the grandkids, right? Like they,
Right.
you think you're spoiled as an only child. If you ever get to the point to have a kid, oh, the way that your parent will treat the kid is like, man, how come I didn't get treated like that? Like it's like 10 times up. So my grandma was like, every time there was a Barney video that she saw and she didn't know if it was one that we had, I would be on the phone telling her yes, no, and she'll grab it and bring it in. And she just allowed me to do that. Like, I was the only kid in my grandma's daycare who could put the VHS tapes in like the VCR and all that stuff. Other kids couldn't touch it. But for me, especially as much as I wanted to watch Barney, they were just like, just go ahead and do it yourself. That way they didn't have to constantly get up, because a 30-minute episode or 45-minute video is not that long. And when you think about it, so instead of me getting
Right.
all the time, go ahead, you just do it yourself. So that I always love when when I talk to fans like yourself of the show who had parents like I had who cared enough to just let you be in that moment, you know. Um, so that's great. Much respect to your mom and showing you that love and giving you that love.
Most definitely, and I've told her that recently when I finally told her about the project that I did. That I appreciated her supporting. That I was a fan of the show. My cousins were older than me, and they weren't Barney fans. And if I watched it, they was like, really? They rather watch wrestling or something else.
Yeah.
But for me, Barney was just something about the show that gravitated to me. Like we talked about earlier, the music and the kids, the cast, Barney, him always happy, never negative.
Mhm.
Never a sad moment. I tell a story where if you watch season one, he slipped and fell in the fire truck and got back up and nothing happened. It's
Yeah,
just, I always felt like if we had more of that in the world today, it would be a better place. We need more of that positivity-ness, and
for sure.
Barney had that. And I think more people should watch it, if not watch it, at least take that and run with it because it kept me going.
Yeah. You were you were born in 91, so you were there when Barney debuted on PBS. Like you were right in that range that they were targeting at that time. And you grew up through the biggest years that Barney was, the night
Right.
just like I was born in 93, so right after season 1, but right in the midst of season, like still at the very beginning of the PBS era of Barney. So I also got to witness, Barney at the prime. Um, did you have or do you have a favorite episode or favorite season of Barney that when you get back, it's always that one that comes to mind for you when you think about Barney?
Um. Hmm. Probably when Barney auditioned to be on Motown. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
There's some fan out there going, "Wait, what? When did this happen?"
Well, as far as a favorite episode, I want that's tricky for me because well, I'll say this: I love season 1 through 6. Those periods of Barney were my favorites because I didn't see all the episodes, but when they did like montage videos, like Barney's Safety or Magical Musical Scrapbook, they had episode clips, I
Yeah.
would see those, and those would stand out the most. But I think definitely for me, when I got it on tape, the Exercise Circus, which
Okay. Yeah.
was Lucy's official last time with the show, but
Mhm.
that was like something that stood out the most because it was they did exercises and they had Joe Scrubs appear. And I
Yeah.
remember that part where he goes, "There's a wiggle in my hand, I can't
Yeah.
stop." And then I said, "Oh
Yeah.
no!" I remember that
Yep.
the most, and that was another one that I would watch a lot. And definitely Magical Musical Adventure was another one. Um, and also in the later seasons, I want to say, "How Does Your Garden Grow?" In this episode, and
Yeah.
where Danielle Vega, who plays Kim, I think what stands out with that episode that I like was that she got to sing "What Makes a Flower So Pretty." And for some reason, even though I thought it was more girly of a song,
Mhm.
that song for some reason stood out to me because I thought it was well put together. And
Yeah.
but though pretty much season 1 through 6 with Barney, the kids, Stella, those are more of my favorite memories that stand out the most.
That's great, man. I'm glad that you bring up "What Makes a Flower So Pretty" because I've always loved that song. Angelo Natali, I know you talked to him for your documentary. Man, what an insanely gifted person when it comes to music, right? Like when I look at when we talk about favorite Barney songs and things like that, most of the songs that really, really speak to me were written by Angelo Natali.
Right.
Weren't written by him. It was either by Steve White and Bob Singleton, or it was by Phil Parker. So like, man, I love what it's just one of those songs that's just I don't know. It's just I don't know what it is about it. It's just a beautiful song, and it's nothing but talking about flowers. And but even the question, the title of the song, and the question of the song, what makes a flower so pretty? How does it cheer up your day? Like things like these things, plants and things like that, those things really do speak to people. And like that's just a wonderful song. And that's one of those songs that I tell people, like, if you take away whatever your opinion is about Barney, listen to What Makes a Flower So Pretty. Listen to Just Imagine. Everyone is Special. Those songs are those songs that they're not just catchy and earwormy, but like they speak to you and your heart in a way that music is supposed to speak to you. You know what I mean?
Most definitely.
And you put a person like Daniel Vega on screen singing that song, or even Bob West, how he performed it in Musical Castle. Like it's just they just sell it the right way that it's supposed to be sold to you, and it's just perfect. I'm glad you bring that song up. That yeah, for
Well,
sure.
that's a song from the later years that I'll say was something that stood out
Yeah,
the most for me because of just the melody, and I don't know why, but for some reason, whenever I heard that song, it made me want to write a poem.
yeah.
I don't know why, but it made me just want to sit out by the flowers or go to the park and just write a poem about a flower, or not to be weirded out, but to give a flower to a girl and say, "Hey, this is what I think of a flower towards you. What makes it pretty?" But
No, I mean, I mean, as adults now, or even as young kids, as you grow and you find these other interests, those are things that are just unspoken. Writing a poem or these flowers, whether you're giving it to a girl or you're giving it to your mom or any person that appreciates. I love, like, my favorite flower is bleeding hearts. Have you ever heard
mm,
of flower?
I have, and when I worked at Lowe's, I was surrounded by those flowers. So yes,
Yeah, man. It's for people who don't know, who's just listening or watching us. It grows on kind of like a vine, and they're literally flowers in the shape of hearts. Um,
right.
they come in some bright reds, or sometimes they're like a lighter, almost pink color. Like they're so beautiful. But I've always, through my experience of life, giving flowers or plants to people. Um, it's just one of those things. Like it's one of those kind of gifts that it always works. And a song like that highlights that kind of a thing. Um, I think a flower is most beautiful when you give it away. It's true. You know, you give it to somebody. Yeah, it's great. I got this flower. This is a wonderful flower, but you give that to somebody, you make their day. And when you make that person's day, it makes your day. And now that person goes and makes someone else's day. And that's what Barney taught. And I've never thought about that song that deep. Maybe we're going too deep about this Barney song, but it really does. Like Angela Natali wrote a wonderful song that really spoke to what it means to have a flower and give it to someone else and the nature of it. But it fits so well in this world of Barney, like it's perfectly.
Most definitely. I mean, I think they had a perfect team of writers, songwriters to come up with that melody, to come up with the lyrics for that particularly, and
Yeah,
having that continue on in the Barney canon of great songs he already had. I mean, it was magical. I mean, like I said earlier, it felt like you could fly just hearing all those great songs they had over the years.
yeah, and it was a step up too. Like Barney songs in the very beginning. Obviously, when you got started with that show, you didn't have a ton of original songs, so it was a bunch of re-lyrics of traditional songs and that kind of thing. But as they started to grow, music like "What Makes a Flower So Pretty," "It's a Great Day," also written by Angela Natali. Um, those kind of songs, you never, if you were watching Barney in season one, you never would think those kind of songs would be on a show like Barney. But then, by the time that show grew and evolved, those songs just made sense. And that's what I appreciate when I watch Barney. I watched it all the way into the later years. I
Mm,
like Barney, and like my opinion of episodes and videos is not so much about the content. As a kid, it was always about what song choices that they make. And
right.
even in the later seasons, you know, um, even in an era with Riff, if they would have sung that song, and I think they maybe did sing that song in a Riff era episode, it's still a beautiful song, and it still works, even if the whole concept of the show had changed. Choosing those right songs still made it worthwhile. In my
Most definitely.
Yeah. Um, so you grow through Barney. You watch it obviously from the very beginning. Did you go through a phase where you're like, um, I'm too old to watch the show now, or you grew away from it and found more interest in other things?
Well, I'll say it was a period of that. I mean, around 2000 ish, which was kind of around the time Bob West had retired from The Voice, and I didn't know that at that point. Around that period, I started getting into other teen shows. Obviously, that was around the time I started watching Hey Arnold and Rocket Power and
Yeah,
the teen show Degrassi and other things. And then that's when I kind of wanted to get into being a writer and doing teen kind of stories and also daytime serials as well. So I won't say that Barney had left me because I did keep the Barney spirit with the songs and episode clips. But I do remember flicking the channel once and going, hmm, Barney's voice is definitely different, ain't it? Oh, Bob West retired and here's Dean Wynn. I didn't know all that. So I want to say around season 6 was kind of like my last period, like Barney's Night Before Christmas, which was one of my favorites. That and Waiting for Santa because I love Christmas, and
Oh yeah.
I thought both productions were done perfectly well in the early years, and
Oh
then
yeah.
years later. So that and What a World We Share, It's Time for Counting. Those videos toward the end were like the ones that were like my last years with Barney, and then I guess that's when I just I won't say pulled away, but that's when I stopped watching the show. But I figured Barney was just gonna keep going like Sesame Street and all
Yeah.
that. I didn't even cross my mind that one day it was going to get canceled or Riff. I do remember being home one day going, "Who's this new guy? Riff? Who's
Yeah.
this?"
Where did this guy come from?
Right, because I was a part of the early years, so I didn't even know about this new guy and the whole caboose set. And then I found out years later they had Selena Gomez and Demi
Yeah.
Lovato. I was like, really? Because I knew them from Disney Channel. I was like, maybe they
Mhm.
met Lucy and Tina. Oh no, wait, they were on there. Okay,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
so
Man, that's cool. Like I never grew out of the show, and I think it's because my grandma had and she still does have an in-home daycare. So I was
right,
always the introduction to new generations of kids to Barney. So even if I did try to grow away from the show, Barney was on the TV all the time because every kid that ever watched Barney at my grandma's daycare fell in love with it. So it was always on TV. We always only had PBS anyway. So it was in the mix of all those shows. So I saw every generation of the show. So for me, like different from you and a lot of other fans, I didn't realize Bob West stopped voicing Barney at a certain point. I You got to think from 88 all the way up to 2000, his voice kept evolving. I never paid attention to credits as a kid. It was like once this is over, now it's time to put another one in. I didn't even watch the credits. Let's get to the next movie. You know what I mean? So I never read names and things. You know what I mean? So like I always thought it was just Bob West elevating the voice more and more. So it never bothered me that he sounded different than he did before. Until I got older and really started to pay attention to those kind of things where I'm like, oh, it's a completely different guy, you know? Um, but someone who stepped away for a little bit of time and didn't really keep up with the new stuff and then come back, it would be drastically different to you, and you would go, "Wow, what is this voice?" Um, so it was always interesting for me that I never experienced that, and I think because I watched it so much, I didn't mind Riff joining in because I continuously watched it. So it was like I loved new things. Like at some point, if you're a kid, you got to think if I'm not born in '93, I watched Barney for 10 years at that point, or 12 years at that point. It's like, okay, yeah, it's time for something fresh for me from my standpoint because I've seen this same thing. You know, for new kids during that generation, there's a lot of kids now who are young adults who they only ever knew Barney with Riff, and
right,
they never knew the Bob West version, right? So we're in that world now where we're all just mixed in, and we have very different versions of Barney. And now at the end of this year, there's going to be a whole new generation that has an even more very different version of a Barney than we've ever experienced. So I had the same thing as you though, where it's like, man, I never thought the show would ever go away. Like I got to a point that I gave a lot of my toys away. Just
hmm
I was like, well, they won't have any, collection value because Barney's just going to be around. And then, 6 years later, it's off the air, and you're like, oh crap, man, all my stuff that like is worth now is gone. Like, what's happening? Like,
right.
do you have any of your old things that like still around, Barney related things?
Man, I wish I kept all that, man. I mean,
Man,
we thought we had BJ still, but we don't, unfortunately. The only thing I still have, other than my memories, of course, is this picture that my aunt gave me that I think some people might have seen. It's a picture of me in '96 or '97 at a
oh
birthday
nice,
party, and there's Barney
yeah,
on the cake. And this is a memory to me because I think even then my family might knew I liked Barney, but I know my mother definitely was like, yeah, Barney. So I do have that. And I found this recently, the original 1990 release of Waiting for Santa.
Wow, nice.
So this is an add-on to my collection, and I have this that I'm adding to my treasure. Lori Lazarus, who was one of the early composer writers for the show, who I spoke with for
Yeah.
the movie, gave me this as a booklet with him and the late Stephen Bates.
Oh man, that's awesome.
And the melody on here is like from the "I Love You" song, but as it goes on here is "We love you, you love us. When you hear this song, don't cuss." So
That's great.
it's like a whole booklet
Yeah,
pamphlet thing. It's talking about because we didn't write it. Da, 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 da. So it's a whole thing, and that's
that's
actually the picture I put in when I talked about Stephen Bates in the movie. So
yeah,
it's like a whole booklet that I treasure, and I mean, like I said earlier, I wish I would have kept that. The only DVD I ever had of Barney was The Night Before Christmas, because I saw it and was like, "Hey, this is a classic here," and I found it and
yeah.
rented it. But when we moved recently, I was like, "Well, I can burn DVDs. I'll get it later." And I wish I would have kept it because I would have everybody signed it. But pretty much the memories stand out, and that when Barney was in the early years, his voice was way down here. Hi, kids. Well, how are you, Tina? This is the
Mhm.
backyard game. That's as close as I can get to the voice.
Yeah, nice. My daughter, she's 3 right now. She's watched Barney ever since she could pay attention to TV. She watches Barney and my show, but like right now she's in this era, and it's so strange to see a kid of this era who is now she's obsessed with Backyard Gang Barney. Like she doesn't want to watch anything else. It's I want to. She calls it the big one, and I'm like Onyx. That's her name. I'm like Onyx. They're all big, but she's like I want to watch the big one, but I know that that's what she's. Or she'll go. I want to watch the dark one. Like she's so obsessed with Backyard Gang right now, but it's super cool because I've always heard from fans like when they were introduced to it or came across it, it kind of was off-putting or scary to them. And this is a 3-year-old kid who has never lived in a world with Barney as an actual character that's airing on TV. It's only being shown to her through the memories of a parent who grew up with it. And I show her everything from the very beginning to the Riff era. I show her all of it, and she
Right.
loves it all. But she's right now in that phase where she wants to watch that version of Barney. Open your umbrellas, like and she sings the songs and all that, and like she just really enjoys it so much. But it's cool to witness that even that very, very, very different version of Barney, that very big, what set us up for what we have, is just as appealing to kids today as any of those other shows are.
Well, that is a testament treasure that I will say to newbies just watching Barney is that is important to go back and watch the early years
Yeah,
and then take it all the way till the end. I mean, Barney's costume, of course, has changed and the kids come and go over the years, but all episodes, even the early ones with Sandy Duncan, were all message orientated. It was for, as she put it, edutainment, and
yeah,
it was everything, and it was great for Sherlin to even get Sandy Duncan and have her be included in it, and the way they promoted it. I mean, even then, it was a feeling like this could take off, and for it to go on as long as it did. I mean, it's a testament, and yeah, definitely, I think all people should watch the beginning and go all the way until the very end, and you'll know what Barney was and who he was.
yeah.
And I want to say real quick to what you said earlier.
Mhm.
When I first watched Barney in the Backyard Gang era, because his voice was deep, I
Uh-huh.
thought that was a totally different actor. I had no idea that was still Bob West, because it's like if you hear the PBS version in them early tapes, it's like, well, Barney's voice is a little deep, man. Don't that sound like that's somebody? Because he sounds more like a Barry White, Melvin Franklin kind of thing. So it's
Yeah,
like, well, how did Bob get his voice that deep? But I found out, that's
yeah.
interesting for him to have that ping to carry that for so long, and then do the PBS
Oh
voice that
yeah.
we all know. So
Oh
you
yeah.
know,
And see that ties right in, like you said, to what I said about watching it for so long. I didn't realize it switched actors. I thought, I mean, I didn't even realize when Duncan Brannon and Tim Dever took over. Like it just sounded like another just evolution of Bob West to
Right.
me. And I always say this. I argue if you listen to Musical Castle live, if you listen to Bob's final voice acting for Barney there, it's not too far off from where Dean is. Dean is a little bit more of a high pitch, but their voices are very close, especially the very early Park era seasons, before Dean just eventually started almost just talking as himself just a little bit because
Right.
it's very close to his Barney voice. But Musical Castle's Bob West Barney did not sound too much different from what Dean Wint started to do. Not to me, it didn't. Even when I listen now, even if you listen to live in New York City, when at the very beginning when he's like, "Oh, gee, this is going to take a long time," like it sounds like Dean Wint a little
Right.
bit with just that delivery of that line. So there's some similarities there. Some people are biased because of the generations we grew up in, but um, I love both. I love both guys. But yeah, Bob West was phenomenal in what he did, and to do that voice, I think he said he used to channel William Shatner, I believe, with like the imitation of like the voice, to make it that low. But like, yeah, I mean, that just shows you how dedicated to this character he was from the very beginning to allow himself to go through with doing that voice, even though it was not sitting in a comfortable space for his, for his vocal cords.
Right.
And you just have to give him even that much more respect for, being a professional in that way and just doing what needed to be done for the character at that time.
I want I want to say too that Radio City, that production was another memory of my childhood that I loved watching as a kid. That and
Yeah.
Imagination Island. I remember my mother ordering that as well, and we went to get it. And I remember watching it, and it is weird, which also shows my like for the show. I tried to find a similar Barney bag at Toys R Us, trying to imitate it. Unfortunately, I couldn't find one, but I found one. It was all brown and they had the same designs. And looking back, I went, if I had known Toys R Us was going to close, I would have went and bought that and been like,
Oh
hey,
yeah.
it's as close to a Barney bag I can get. But I was glued to that. I was standoffish to the Wankster. I'm like, who's this guy running around taking the Barney bag the whole show? You
Yeah.
can't do that.
Man, what are you doing with the bag, man?
Right, but that was another one that was a favorite, and I will say a tribute to David Voss. It's ironic that he played the early Barney, and they asked him back to play the Wankster. That was an
Oh yeah.
interesting whole setup that Steve White did, writing it only for 2 weeks. He said,
Weeks.
"Yeah, crazy, crazy."
I always will say I don't think anyone on that show ever will get as much respect as they deserve. Like we give them so much respect, but I think there's so much more that they deserve. 2 weeks to have never written a stage show at all, to be writing to fill a Radio City Music Hall stage. That's not a theater stage. You're filling Radio City Music Hall.
Right.
Took 2 weeks for a show that sold out just a little bit, super fast, just right below U2.
Right.
You and Barney. And that record has not been beat yet. Like, there's no, for the rest of our lives, the rest of their lives, as long as the world exists, I don't think there's more respect. You can give them enough respect. Steve White, the creator, to create this show and do those kind of things under that time constraint. And you ask today what your favorite Barney video is, and 90% of the fan base is saying Imagination Island, Radio City Music Hall.
Most definitely. I mean, for me, Radio City, I remember asking them, it was like, you had 2 weeks and you talking about Barney coming out, the kids, the Wankster,
Yeah.
the tree, the baseball, the rain, the circus,
Yeah.
the balcony on both ends with Barney and the Wankster and the mopping bucket. I mean, how do you jot all that down in 2 weeks and then squeeze in the ending with the heart coming down and them going everyone is special and Barney jumping out and giving a kiss goodbye? I mean, that was treasure for me watching the kids imitate everything in Imagination Island. I mean, that whole production of that was wonderful. I mean, to me, I love the scene with Min and Tasha because they seem more like sisters and friends because they bonded so closely. And, and having Tinkerput, the Grease, Barry Pearl. I had no idea about the Grease stuff when I was like, he was on Grease? I had no idea.
Yeah.
So,
Man.
I was intrigued by that whole thing, and I remember at the end watching the preview. Go get the Imagination Island book, Mom. Can we go get the book? And we got it maybe a week or two later. That's another memory I remember the most about that period. So
Man, awesome, man. Yeah, Barry Porter is amazing. I need to talk to him one of these days. Man, what an amazing person. Um, let's pivot a little bit. We've alluded to it a few times here. I think most people who's watching or listening, this is the moment they're actually wanting to hear about. Um, you've created this two-part series. You Are Special, Barney documentary on YouTube, chronologizing and analyzing the history of Barney and Friends, the beginning to you know to where it ended, and then you have all these people, cast and crew. I was so honored to be a part of that from a fan perspective. We know that you were a fan of Barney. We know a little bit about what drew you to Barney. What was any other reason to say now is the time to create this? And how long did that take you to make that thing happen?
well, how much time do we have? I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
Well, for me, what stood out was like I said earlier, I just felt like Barney to get the credit he deserved. That's why y'all saw that clip at the end, the part about the daytime Emmys, and Eric Norberg spoke on that as well a lot of why they didn't get an award other than the mixing. But I just felt like, we're all getting older. They're getting older. No offense to the Bob and them, but
yeah,
why not do this? Reach out and hear their story about how they got involved with Barney, and not to get into a negative trend, about people who didn't like the show. I mean, I grew up back then. I went to school with people who didn't like Barney. If you brought it up,
yeah,
people laughed at you. But for me personally, I just was like, there's a story here to tell, and to attribute that and pay homage to Cheryl, Dennis, Kathy, Bob, Steve, Jess, Ray Henry, David
oh
Booth, who
yeah,
did the audio, all these people who were involved, the kids over the years, and because of people like Stella, Miss Penny, Stephen Bates, and Steve Tennant, all these people that were involved in the
yeah,
show who have passed away, they didn't get a chance to tell their story. So this would
mhm,
be a way of paying back and paying homage and saying, hey, let's talk about how you got involved with the show, what's the memory stands out, favorite song, you name it. Um, and this has been an idea I've been trying to do since early 2020, way before the Peacock
wow,
documentary dropped. There was an idea I had after I saw Brian Epps and Derek and some others on on Carrie Stinson's
yeah,
podcast at the time. I was like, this is a story to really get into and tell, and we can do it as a voiceover documentary. As Don Hun, a producer from Disney, put it, no talking heads, just voiceover on top of footage and photos, and just tell this long journey about how it came about, and do it right. Not do it in a few seconds. Because Barney, 88 till 2010, that's a lot of time to cover, and I thought was to do it to also include fans and also memorial tribute, and ending it with what is Barney's legacy. That's the first thing you think about when they talk about his legacy, because he was
yeah,
on for so many years. It was a generation, 88 to 2010. A lot happened in the world since then, and a
yeah,
lot happened since Barney ended. So
yeah,
I felt it was the time, and I part of me wish I could have did. Might could have done more, but I'm happy with what I did, and it was a blessing talking with everybody, and it's a moment that comes when it's like, hey, I spoke to Jess Nelson, I spoke to Steve White, I talked to Bob West, the voice itself. I didn't know nothing about Dino Sync. Or okay,
yeah, yeah.
but it was a journey, and it was just something I wanted to do to my best ability as a storyteller.
Man, that's awesome. I applaud you, as many fans have, as many of those cast and crew that you talk to have. Um, Such a great job to put it together. Obviously, to be doing it independently and putting it, on a place like YouTube. Um, the way that you put it together, that you can tell that you thought it out, and you can tell that you care about this character. You care about um, uh, what's the word I'm trying to think of? Honoring the stories of all these people who are involved. You saw that pour out into this documentary. Very much, and I've seen other fans say this. I think you've seen it too. This is what I Love You that documentary, the Peacock documentary, should have been. Obviously, the Peacock documentary was what it was because that was the angle they were already going to take. It didn't change to that. Their focus was always going to be that. Um,
Right.
but when that documentary aired, and what people have always said since then is this kind of a documentary is what Barney deserves. They've done it for Sesame Street many times. They've done it for Mr. Rogers. They've done it for these other shows. And you're absolutely right. We live in a world where people act like, and I think I said this with you during my interview with you for your documentary. We live in this world where people act like Barney didn't exist, like he didn't break the records that he broke, that he didn't set up this lane for children's entertainment, that all these other shows came and followed after. Even if you look at Sesame Street today, Sesame Street is a great show, but if you look at Sesame Street today and you look at Sesame Street from the '90s, they're two very different shows. To me,
Right.
it seems like when Barney finally went off the air, Sesame Street adopted Barney's formula. It's far more music, it's far more colorful, it's far more, we're focusing on these imaginary characters more than anything else. To me, it feels more like a Barney show. You can take out Elmo and all these guys and put Barney, BJ, and Baby Bop in, and the stuff they're talking about would feel right at home with Barney. Um, and that's
Most
not a
definitely.
shot at Sesame Street, but Blue's Clues came along because of Barney. Bear in the Big Blue House, yeah, they always make jokes. We wanted something not as annoying as Barney, but if Barney wasn't around, would we have had a Bear in the Big Blue House? Probably not. You
No,
know,
I don't
when
think
you look
so.
at Arthur, they said we want a theme song as catchy as the Barney theme song, but not as annoying. If that was not around, would we have the Arthur theme song that we have? Probably not. You see what I'm saying? And
Right.
I love your documentary because it did nothing but give the love to the character and to the people that worked on that show, the love that they deserve. And yeah, you talk to all these people, but I think, and I don't want to speak for you, but one of the coolest things that I saw, one of the highlights of that documentary being out, is you get to you get a message from the queen herself, Cheryl Leach, and she's seen your work about this character that she was the mastermind behind, and she loves what you did. Like, what was that experience like? See, getting that alert on whatever your phone or whatever it was, and reading that message. What is that? If you were able to talk to Cheryl right now, what would you tell her? How did that feel? Getting that from her.
Well, I will say that first off, it touched my heart because I was nervous about what everybody would think. Was it too long? Was it this, that?
Hmm.
But when I saw it from Cheryl's perspective, when I sent it to her and she messaged me back instantly after she watched it, saying that she needed to get through 2 boxes of tissues, I was just
Yeah.
like, wow. I mean, you know, I did something right here, and it's like, and
Mhm.
as one fan put it, I didn't just get a tape recorder and do like a reporter kind of thing. I really pulled my heart into it and got
Oh yeah.
everybody involved to talk about it. And if Cheryl was here, I would tell her, I would, kiss her finger and say thank you for making my childhood possible, and many fans' childhood possible. You did this through the eyes of your son, Patrick, and she don't. I hope she knows how many lives she touched, and she definitely had an effect on my life, my mother's life, being raised as an
Yeah.
only child and a single parent. I mean, Barney was all the videos, the episodes, the tapes, the plush toys. We went to go see Musical Castle when it came to Baltimore
Wow.
that one time, and I remember instantly Barney blowing a kiss and the hearts coming and me running down trying to. I think I caught like 3 or 4 of them. I wish I
Nice.
still had them, but just it meant a lot to me. And even though I'm older now, I'll be in my 34 in the next 2-3 months from now.
Hmm.
It's still a part of my legacy, and it'll go on until I'm older. We'll
Yeah.
be in our 70s and 80s. Somebody be like, "What was Barney?" Well, let me tell you a story about a time in our life in the 80s and 90s before
Yeah.
cable took off the way it did, and we had a purple dinosaur full of imagination and love called
Hmm.
Barney and Friends. And whether you want to watch Barney Backyard Gang or the TV show, the movies, the Radio City, Imagination Island, and so forth, Barney is about love, I loved it, and Cheryl, her creating this. I mean, I thank her for it.
Yeah, I love that, man. I think we always, or we at least try to. Everybody I talk to on this podcast always give our love to Cheryl Leach, to Dennis, to Kathy Park, to all those people that made that show happen. You know, um, and social media is a weird world, right? But I love it today because without it, we would not be able to tell these people how much we appreciate them and the work that they did and how it impacts us. You know what I mean? And now we don't have to be in the same place as them. We don't have to by chance just randomly run into them. We can be on social media on a LinkedIn or something and we can get a message from that person because they've seen our work, and
Right.
we get to do things like this, or you get to create what you did and throw it onto a place like YouTube and share it with everyone. But more importantly, we get to tell those people specifically, thank you for being a writer on this, or thank you for wanting to create the quality programming that now we have this show. Thank you for directing this the way that you guys did.
I
Thank
think
you.
I think of Barney, hurry, hurry, stop the fire
Yeah,
truck.
cue the music, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I live by we live by the fire station, so that happens occasionally.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be about the time the song would come on. But no, man, yeah, it's I just want to say, from my own perspective, not speaking for anyone else, but I think others will echo this. I'm proud of I'm proud of you, and I'm proud of the time that you put into it. And I say thank you to Cheryl and them all the time, but also thank you to you for capturing our childhood in such a good way, and putting it out there, making it available for other people to experience it and live with it. People who maybe didn't even understand the show, or people who grew out of it and maybe forgot about it, or the people who are still with, like we are. That's something that works for everybody. It fits for everyone if they want to take the time to dive into it. And people don't understand what it's like to put so much time into something like this, hold those interviews, edit it all together, put the music in the right place, put the clips in the right place. Like, all those things take so much time and effort, and you have to have a passion for that. You deserve a lot of deserve all the credit and all the respect that you poured into it. So thank you for sharing that with us. It's truly it's a masterpiece from an independent standpoint. And you single-handedly, created that on your own. So you should feel proud about that. I hope you do, and I hope you know that the community cares deeply about that project that you did.
Man, I gotta say, man, I'm carrying a heavy heart right now, man. I appreciate that. I mean, I want to say to the fans, thank you for loving Barney as long as you have. Thank you for watching my project. It is a pat on the back for me because I started making short films 10 years ago. It was my 10-year anniversary, and I didn't think I was in college, and I didn't think 10 years later I'm still making short films, doing documentaries, and doing this on Barney, something I've been wanting to do for some time. I mean, it's just I didn't know it was going to be as big and pan off as it did, and I feel like if Cheryl loved it, the fans loved it, everybody who I interviewed and spoken with has loved it and took in something from it. And when I interviewed the twins, I got a message from them, and they said they weren't fans. They didn't even know about it because they weren't on in the early years. So it was great just hearing from people and the fans, and this has been a blessing, and I'm grateful for it, and I look forward to the next project.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, man, you did such a great job. All the people you talked to also were great. I want to talk to some of those people here on the podcast. I want to talk to Cheryl too, because I just think we have to, while she's here still, she deserves to share her story. And I think people would love to see that. Um, so if you're
I,
listening, Cheryl, I think she'll be listening. They know about the podcast, her and Dennis both. So um, whenever they feel comfortable, they're always welcome here in the seat with us.
I hope so too. I mean, I definitely would love to hear Cheryl's story, her background from her perspective, Dennis from his background, Kathy as well. I mean, I attribute they're like the Three Musketeers.
Yeah,
All three of them pulled together, and a lot of people like Dennis was already working at DLM with Richard Leach, which is something I found out about. So it'd be great
right.
to learn their backgrounds and Cheryl's. I mean, it would be a true blessing. I mean, that's the day I probably I would probably just miss a day from work so I could just
Yeah,
Just
that's
so I
the
can
thing,
watch that.
for sure. Um, Usually at this part of the podcast, every podcast we have fans bring on a Barney item that means the most to them and share why. Did you already share that item earlier when you were talking about some of the stuff you had with you, or is there a different item that you have?
Oh, yeah. When I mentioned the picture, the tape, and the pamphlet I got from Lori, those were my
Those
standout.
were the
Yeah.
perfect. Yeah, I wanted to make sure we didn't skip anything. Great, and I didn't really comment much on them because I pivoted away for a second. But those are all great things to have. If you're listening to the podcast, if you're not watching it, jump over to Spotify, or you could jump over to our YouTube channel or the website barneyhistoryfans.com, and you can watch this video so you can actually see those items that Matt has. Great things to hang on to, for sure. um Before we end it here today, I ask everybody the same question at the end of every podcast episode, and it's just specifically to you and your personal feeling. But my question always is, why Barney? And however you interpret that question, you can answer it. Why was Barney the character for you, or why does the world need Barney? Just in general, why Barney the dinosaur out of everything else? Why that character?
Ooh. Wow. That's a big one. Well, for me, why Barney? Well, that's actually a question I asked my mother recently. What was it about Barney that made her want to buy the tapes? I
Mhm.
mean, for me, for Barney, what does it was just the love. He was about love. He was about respect. He was positive. He was never negative. Like I said earlier, he slipped and fell in the fire truck. He didn't get angry or mad or bitter with the kids. He was always happy, and that was something that was a stand for me. It's like, hey, if I'm having a bad day or a sad day, I could turn on Barney and be positive at the end of the day. I could be laughing,
Yeah.
dancing, getting in the groove, have my toy with me, and he meant a lot to me. Even as I got older, it was something I always kept in the back of my noggin. I did a tribute to Barney when it was their 20th or 25th anniversary. I put on my YouTube channel to summarize just my caring for Barney, the show, and just what he meant to me. And I think he's a culture for the world. I mean, the world needs a Barney. Like I said
Yeah.
earlier, the world has changed a lot since Barney went off the air. I mean, who could imagine? I don't know what direction we'll go into when COVID first broke out with Barney, but Barney
Yeah.
is needed for everybody. And I've said, and I'll say this: I always felt like the "I Love You" song and "Everyone Is Special," even though they're for kids and babies. I mean, because you think about it, babies, there were babies who were sick, and Barney came to them, and that
Yeah.
was that might have been their last memory. But those two songs I always felt was an attribute for everybody. Even now, as
Mhm.
adults, we could use those kind of messages. Hey, I love you. You love me. We're one big happy family, and the world is better because you're here. You should know that we love you. That is an important phrase that everybody needs, especially today. So it was just the message, and if people don't like or get them, it's like, well, you need to watch them. Don't just watch one clip. Watch the whole program, and I bet you at the end of it, you're going to love and appreciate Barney and what it stood for. So it touched me. It touched fans just watching this today. The cast, the crew. If it didn't touch the crew, they wouldn't have stayed on as long as they did. I mean, a lot of those
Exactly.
guys stayed on for years and put their heart and soul into it.
Yeah.
And it resonated with me. I may not watch later when Dean and Carrie came on and riff, but the early years and even for them to carry on as long as they did till the end, Barney was a culture.
For
And it meant
sure.
a lot to me and everybody. And like I said earlier, it's just something that everybody needs. We need that positive culture because so much going on in the world today. We need something to get away from the negative and come
Oh
into the
yeah.
positive. And Mr. Sun, bring on that happiness of sunshine.
Yeah.
And I'm somebody personally, I love watching the sun and the sun setting at the park. So it's a positiveness that comes out of that. And Barney brought that with all of that. Even with Stella when she came on, she brought positiveness to the kids, Toodles, cool die, so
For sure.
it's a culture. It's
Yeah,
in there with Rugrats and Disney and all that stuff. It's a culture, and it's something that we all need and love even today. Spread the
absolutely.
love.
Absolutely. Spread the love. Excuse me. I love that, man. Before we end it here, um, tell people how they can find you, and if there's anything that you want to share about what you're working on next for people to keep an eye out for.
Well, you can find me on Facebook, Matt Parrish, Matt Matt, and Parrish Parrish. You can also follow me on YouTube. I have a YouTube channel, PE Slick Podcast. I'm actually getting ready to get back into podcasting this month and next month to bring on some guests. And if you go onto my other channel, the Movie Ranger Express, which ties into Ranger Matt. If you look that up, you'll see that's where the documentary is, and I may be posting my next project on that, along with some deleted scenes as well. The next project I'm tackling next is there was another children's show that was it wasn't long as Barney, but for those who remember it, Theodore Tugboat.
Oh,
That was a favorite of mine as well growing up, and that's a project. I don't know how long that one's going to be, but I've talked to the producer who created this show and funded it, so we're going to talk and some of the crew. So we'll see what happens with that one. And something else I'm gonna be working on, maybe Barney related. I can't say what it is, but if it's meant to be and if it pans out, I'll keep everybody posted. But just follow me
awesome.
on Facebook. Follow me on my 2 YouTube channels. I post stuff all the time for my podcast, old commercials because I'm old school. So I got a lot of stuff on tape,
Yeah,
commercials and the stories. So I post stuff sometimes when I have time. So reach out. I'm a friendly guy, quiet. I'm not too active as much on Facebook like I could be because I'm working all the time. But when I get to everybody message, I will get to it. So please reach out. I'll talk to you. I'll share a Barney memory.
awesome. Man, sounds great, Matt. Again, thank you so much for joining us here today. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to talk to us, to share a little bit of your experience, and talk to us a little bit more about that documentary. Again, we appreciate you and the work that you've done. We're proud of what you've done so far, and we really just appreciate you for being on the podcast talking to us today.
Well, thank you, Caron, for bringing me on. I suggest everybody tune in and watch this gentleman here. He's going to explode.
Thank
All
you.
these people that he's going to have on, and many more to come. And this interview was stupendous.
That's
I
awesome.
just I
All right, man.
appreciate this, and thank you, fans. Thank you to people watching who was on Barney and Cheryl, Dennis, Kathy. Thank you, guys. Thank you for making my childhood and our childhood possible. Thank you. Thank you, Cameron.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, everybody, for tuning in to this episode of Spots of Love podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. And who knows, maybe next time we'll see you in your spot of love. Take care, everybody.